I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond-producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109-carat diamond, recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior. It is expected to sell in excess of $65 million US at Sotheby's, London, June 29th, with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Harvey Oberfeld, retired television reporter, but still actively engaged in the political scene and what's going on in the world. Check out his website, harveyoberfeld.ca, where you can find his blog, Keeping It Real. Welcome back to the show, Harvey.
Good to be back.
Wasn't that an exciting night of television, watching the results of that British referendum?
Well, you know, I love politics, and this was no disappointment. I was glued to the set and watching BBC, and it was very good coverage, I must say. But it was easy to understand, and watching it all come in. I just love some of the names. There's one there I remember called, here's the results from the Isle of Scilly. And it just sounded like something like a Monty Python skit, but there is a place called the Isle of Scilly, but Scilly is spelled S-C-I-L-L-Y, but it's so British, but some of the other names I enjoyed too. But it was quite a night, quite a surprising outcome. I actually thought they would vote to remain by a small majority, but I was wrong. But when I look back at what happened and why, it really wasn't that surprising.
Harvey, what's your take on why people in Britain thought that they should leave the European Union, a place they've called home for 43 years?
Well, you know, the title I put on my blog this morning was Strangers in Their Own Land. And I do some traveling now. I've been in, last spring I was in Britain. The previous November I was in Britain. I've been to Italy. I've been to France. I've actually seen. I've been to Spain. I've seen what's happening. You know, we see on TV all these thousands and hundreds of thousands, and now there's millions of people coming in from other places, and we just see them arriving. And the TV shows us these beautiful pictures of terribly forlorn children and adults, and your heart goes out to them, you know, you can't help but feel sorry for them. But when you look at the numbers and the fact that these people come in, they don't have language skills in the languages of the countries they're going to, they don't have job skills, they don't have education, a lot of them. What is society to do with them? They in Britain, in the case of Britain, they have many who've come in. Of course, the EU is pushing for them to take more, constantly saying you haven't taken enough. But don't forget, in Britain they have another problem, another reality that they deal with. There's more than 3 million people from the EU, the eastern part of the EU, from Poland, from Romania, who have come to work in Britain, and under the EU rules they were allowed. Travel is allowed to work. So they not only have the refugees, they not only have the asylum seekers, they not only have all the illegals, people who come in on visitor permits or come in as students but don't go to school, they just end up working. They've got all these people who come to visit relatives and never leave. They've got a horrendous situation on top of the people that are coming in as refugees. So it's just added up, and you can see it on the streets of, you walk around London or even other British cities, and you will see the whole changing face of Britain. And I think basically what happened is the people got tired of it and just said, it's almost a Donald Trump thing. We have to take back our take back Britain. And that's kind of a phrase that, take back America or make America great again. Well, that's what was happening in Britain to people who usually would not have anything to do with that kind of thinking. But I think they had enough, and they decided, with the EU wanting to do more and have them take more, and regulating, I mean, the degree of regulation that the EU imposes on the various countries, it's a bureaucrat's dream come true, but it's a horror for the people who had to live under it.
Well, one of the things that the Leave the EU people were saying is, look at the millions of pounds that we pay per week to keep the EU going. That's money that should be spent at home.
Yeah, now I heard a figure of 350 million pounds a week going from Britain to the EU. Now, some of it comes back. In terms of dollars, if we look at it in terms of dollars, it was $500 million a week going over to the EU. But apparently about 250 immediately comes rebated back to Britain for various EU-type projects that are done in Britain. Then there's additional amounts that the EU spent in Britain for research and all that kind of thing. So there was a lot of that $500 million or 350 million pounds did come back to Britain, but not all of it, because of course there is a need to support the bureaucracy and the government, the European Parliament, and various activities that are there. So it was not from a point of view of a purely economic spending, it was a loss for Britain. It was not a net gain situation, but as anything else you expect, but we are making, it's giving us better markets, it's giving us places to sell our goods. It's making us the financial capital of not just Britain, but of Europe. It's brought us thousands of jobs that way. So, you can't just weigh it in terms of an outflowing cost. And the British government was gambling, and I guess the business community was gambling, but people would realize that there are more pluses to sticking together than negatives. But what they didn't deal with was the social cost of having, these millions of people traveling flowing into the country, and basically changing the whole face of Britain and the whole nature of British society. And it's not a case. A lot of people think, what you're talking about is, whites versus the others. No, because there are many people who are born in Britain who are not white. There's many people who legitimately immigrated to Britain generations ago or years ago who are not white, who voted to leave because they saw what was happening to their country was this takeover by people just flowing in, and a lot of them are white. The people from the Eastern European countries are white. So it's not just that they were against Asians or Africans or Arabs or whatever. That was a large component. But basically there were 3 million whites who came in also from Eastern Europe, from Poland, from Romania, from I'm trying to think of some of the other Eastern European countries. Italy, a lot of Italians came to work there. So there are a lot of people that came in that were white, but they came in because they wanted to live in Britain, they wanted to experience Britain, and they could come and work there. But, the last time I was in Britain, I couldn't help but notice. I stayed at a fairly nice hotel, and almost all the people in the front staff were non-British. All the people cleaning the rooms were not British, at least of British origin. All the people in the dining room serving were Eastern European or from India and Pakistan. Perhaps they're citizens, but you could tell that this was. I would have found it hard to believe I was actually in Britain in a British hotel. And the Europeans at the front desk, I talked to some of them. They were all people that came from Romania, from various places in the EU, because young people, want to experience Britain. And certainly didn't bother me. They were just as friendly as everybody else was. But clearly, to the British people, seeing this happen over and over again, so many places, in so many places, so many factories, so many plants, so many just feeling overwhelmed. They just decided enough was enough.
Well, I know some of the EU rulings that really peeved Brits. Their traditional ingredients for breakfast were declared illegal. They were told that the old British double-decker red buses were illegal under European standards. And those are things that people, when they go to Britain, enjoy, that they're a big part of their culture.
Well, bureaucracies, especially government bureaucracies, given expanded powers and expanded revenues to play with, quite often they run wild. They just they almost look. It's almost like an amoeba that looks for ways to expand, and that goes on all the time with governments. That's why a lot of them try to introduce sunset clauses. Otherwise, the thing will just multiply. And I saw a piece the other day on TV that not only the length of the banana was being regulated and had to be classified, but the curvature. Now, what kind of a bureaucrat sitting in Brussels would come up with some regulation that a farmer or an importer or a grocer is going to have to measure the curvature of the banana? Not that he couldn't sell it if it had I was going to say a forbidden curve, but if it had an errant curve, they just have to declare it as such or categorize it. Who knows? But people just get tired of that and being told everything must change, everything is over-regulated, everything is, but that's not the reason I think people voted to leave. That's some of it. I think that was, the straw that broke the camel's back, if you might say, but I think generally there was a feeling also that they were losing control of their own country. And the EU, anybody who watches the news from over there, the EU has been pushing Britain and even the other countries there to take more and more and more of these people. And if there is a problem that the EU is going to have to address, it's the fact that it has to resist. It has to start resisting the pressure it gets from the United Nations and from the other Arab countries, to take more and more and more refugees. Because the UN, if you'll notice, anybody who watches the news, the UN pushes the EU must take more. And we have the tragic pictures of people coming by boat trying to get in. And Greece can't. How many can Greece absorb? They can't absorb anymore. Europe, I think Germany has over 2 million. But the pressure is never from the United Nations. You'll never see the pressure on the richest Arab nations to take some of these people. People don't realize that, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, the biggest, richest, Bahrain, the biggest, richest Arab countries have not taken a single refugee. Now, we know Jordan has and Turkey has, Lebanon has, but the fact is there are 50 Muslim-majority nations in the world, and very few of them have welcomed any of this terrible flow of refugees, most of whom are Muslims, from the Middle East, from Afghanistan, and most of them have not taken any. And yet there's been this incessant pressure from the United Nations on Europe to take more. And when you when you go there and you see the numbers, you just can't help but notice them walking around in the different garb and that. You're not surprised to see that there is a backlash from the people, from the locals, who say we've taken enough and don't tell us to take any more. And I think some of the blame on this has to be placed on the United Nations, because the United Nations has spent years. Every UN refugee spokesman I've ever seen on television has been pushing and demanding and appealing for Europe to take more people in from these other countries, from Africa, from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Turkey, from Lebanon, from everywhere, and that it's Europe's job to take them in, according to the United Nations. Well, I think it's time that the EU, if it wants to survive, is going to have to push back and tell the UN, we've done our share, time for the richest Arab countries, time for other Muslim countries, time for, what about Russia? What about China? What about other countries to start taking in some of these poor people that need places to go?
How many refugees does Japan take?
Well, exactly. In fact, I know the rules in Japan. If you are an outsider, somebody from a foreign country, and you are living and working in Japan, and I know this from a family situation that came up, and you have a child born in Japan, born right there, that child is not a Japanese citizen. They have different rules about what constitutes a Japanese citizen. So, different countries do have different rules, but you're right. What about Japan? What about, some of these other countries? Now, a lot of them are very, very poor. Like Indonesia has, it's the largest Muslim nation in the world, but they have great economic problems. So they could take some. Maybe they have taken some, but they could take more, some more. But it's the real richest ones who aren't taking any. And that's the paradox that so there's something wrong with the UN just not asking the richest Arab countries to the richest Muslim countries to take in their own brothers and sisters, and those poor kids that you see on TV. Why does it always have to be Europe or Britain or Canada or the United States? There's lots of other countries who could take more. But that's the backlash you're seeing now in Europe, and I don't think Britain is going to be the end of it. I think Britain is just the beginning of what we're going to see. We're going to see more of this in Germany. You're going to see it in the Netherlands. You're going to see it in Greece. I think there are very rough times ahead for the EU. Part of it brought about by its own bureaucratic expansion, but a lot of it brought about by the refugees, the asylum seekers, the economic migrants who have just flooded the continent, and the UN that's been pushing Europe to take more and more and more, and I think the people there have had enough.
We'll have more with Harvey Oberfeld right after the break.
Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond, recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior. It is expected to sell in excess of 65 million US at Sotheby's, London, June 29th, with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Harvey Oberfeld. Harvey, do you think Canada, Vancouver specifically, has some of the same issues that London and the UK faces?
Not really. I know we have problems here with the rising price of housing. We know about that, and I know we've had substantial change to our ethnic makeup in the city of Vancouver. The last figure I saw was 42% are visible minorities. But we've absorbed people. First of all, we need people, and the people we're getting are people that have come in, most of them with language skills or willing to take language skills, with money. People that are coming here, they're not as I saw in Europe, as I saw in Italy, as I saw, they're not running around with boxes, cardboard cartons filled with sunglasses and cheap sunglasses and watches, just basically trying to get a few bucks out of you just so they could survive. They're not all over on the welfare system. It's something really different that is taking place in Europe than here. I don't think we have a problem here. We have some social problems, I think, that I've noticed starting to evolve. And if I were in government, I think I'd be very concerned about what I see. It's not just the high cost of housing. People are starting to feel a little bit that some of the assimilation they hoped would happen with a lot of the Asians that have come in would have happened faster. Instead, we're getting communities of Asians who associate with Asians, do business with Asians, hire Asians, put signs up only in, let's say, Chinese. I saw there was that condo in Richmond that didn't want to hold its meetings in English, just hold their condo meetings in Mandarin. There are some cases like that, but I think those are few and far between compared to what has been happening in Britain and in the rest of the EU.
Harvey, anything else you wanted to bring on this issue?
Well, I'll tell you something, the next thing to watch. Watch Scotland, because the Scots voted heavily to remain in the EU. The Scots tie themselves, they have they really think about the EU as an extension of their business, environment, and they like to be able to go there to find jobs. The young people especially look to. I think they almost look to Europe more than they look south to Britain, to England. And the Scots, I predict, will hold another referendum. And I think if the people in favor of separating push the side that we should align ourselves with the EU and our futures with the EU, I believe the referendum would pass this time, and the Scots themselves would break away from England and Wales and align themselves with the EU instead. And that, I think, is a very dangerous thing in the future. And then watch also what happens in Europe, because other countries, people in other countries, are seeing that Britain has finally taken a stand. The British people have taken a stand against what they see going on all around them, and this thing could send a message to Europe. And I even believe that what happened in Britain will help Donald Trump. As awful as a person I think he is, and I would never vote for him, I think this idea of take our country back that the British, in a way, sort of voted on last night, I think that that will be taken advantage of by Trump in the message he delivers to Americans. And unless the sky falls in the next 3 months, if the American people who lean towards Trump see that Britain did it and survived, that might make them believe that maybe Trump is right, which is even scarier than Britain leaving the EU.
I see a lot of parallels of what's happening now to exactly almost 100 years ago when isolationism was in. We had the dirty 30s, and people thought the way to deal with economic crisis was to seal your borders and deal with your own and screw everybody else. Right.
Well, globalization has been good, certainly good for Canada, I think, overall. Trade is good, I believe, but the problem has not been the economic trade and that, it's the social exchange that has taken place in a one-way direction, and that's the problem. If you decided you wanted to go, let's say, live in Saudi Arabia next year, you spend a couple of years there working there, or just being there, just traveling around, you go try it. You'll see how far you get. You won't even get a visa. You're not even allowed in as a tourist. So it's, there are different rules that apply, and I think the idea of really imposing so many people on any geographical space when the employment rate is already in trouble, or there isn't a vibrant economy, I think you're just asking for trouble, and in this case, they got it.
Harvey, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Welcome.
My guest has been Harvey Oberfeld. Check out his website, harveyoberfeld.ca, where you can find his blog, Keeping It Real. You're listening to The Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Check out our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. You can also find us on Twitter at Talk Digital.
Comments made on The Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.